don't carry those lessons from the past, it will bring us to the brink again. So for those of you who weren't with us last night, I started with an Afrofuturist parable that was written by the great Derek Bell. It was called The Space Traders. And in this parable, people from outer space came and offered our country the resources to end poverty, to end war, to end environmental degradation. There was just one catch. In order to get these resources, to get this technology, our country had to give us up. Our country had to agree to put us on spaceships so that we would go off somewhere unknown in order for them to get all of the resources that were necessary to live a life free of all of these problems. Now, the end of the story showed that our country was willing to give us up. Our country was willing to put us on that spaceship. Now, when he wrote that, a lot of people said that's an exaggeration, it's apocryphal, that's crazy. But let me ask, when you look at Columbia University, when you look at the law firms, when you look at Target, when you look across the board and see that people, institutions are willing to give us up for a price tag, was it apocryphal? Was he being alarmist or extremist, or was he identifying something deep in the roots of this country, that for the right price tag, they will give up our right to inclusion, they will give up our right to health, they will give up our right to wealth, they will give us up if the price is right. So the price apparently is right for a lot of our institutions. The question, though, is what we are going to do about it. So what we want to talk about tonight is how this blind spot, this contradiction in our democracy, the place where anti-blackness is situated, can be addressed with the appropriate tools, with the willingness to fight and the unwillingness to appease. It turns out that there is a history that we can bring forward to help us think about this. So I want to share just a little bit of this history, and because we're in Massachusetts, it's essentially important that we talk about it. So there was a moment in history when black fugitive slaves came to Massachusetts, and they were being hunted down by federal marshals. What did Massachusetts do? What Massachusetts did under the name of states' rights, and let me say, for those of us who are part of the massive resistance generation, that sounds like an oxymoron. How can you talk about states' rights and black civil rights at the same time? Well, Massachusetts did talk about black civil rights. They did say it's our right as Massachusetts to resist this idea that you federal marshals can come into our homes and come into our communities and force us to turn black people over to slave catchers. They went into the streets fighting about this. They had to send federal marshals in order to take Anthony Burns out of Massachusetts. What does that tell us? It tells us that there is a way to fight. It tells us that there is a way to use law to fight. It tells us that we can use the state's laws to fight back against this effort to destroy our civil rights that's coming from the federal government. It also tells us that if we come to the streets, if we say, no, we're not going to take this, and if we have our own law enforcement lawyers backing us up, we can fight this back. So what we want to do is elevate in this conversation what is being done to save our democracy by our states, what is being done by our legal eagles who represent millions of people who are willing to fight back. So what we're going to talk about tonight is all of the things that they are doing, but most importantly, we're going to talk about what you can do to support them. Because as they'll tell you, they can hold the line, but they can't do it alone. They're going to need every single one of us. So our goal tonight is to come away with receipts, come away with the ability to talk about what's happening and come away with the ability to encourage all of us to get involved in this struggle to save our democracy. So, Vineyard, let's get ready for a hot conversation. So, to get started, and I mean that in both senses of the word, and you add my personal one on top of this heat. Okay, so Andrea, I am going to come to you first as the Attorney General in this state. Thank you so much for joining us. So I just went over how Massachusetts has its own history of marshaling state power in the defense of Black lives and freedom, resisting a tyrannical federal government. So clearly now, with this regime that we have in the White House, we're facing these forces once again. How are you leveraging this moment and your position as a Black Attorney General to define states' rights in favor of racial justice, not as opposed to it?
Well, first of all, can you hear me okay? Oh, that's better. First of all, thank you, Dr. Crenshaw, for you and your organization and team for hosting this and organizing all of us. As a graduate of UCLA Law School, it is an honor and privilege to be here with you. She is amazing. So thank you very much. I'm also equally excited and honored to be here with my colleagues who are here and a couple of other Black AGs who couldn't attend, but I'm proud to be a legal eagle with them, a freedom fighter, as you said, with them. It's an honor and privilege to be here with my colleagues as well. And then it's an honor and privilege to be here with all of you. Yes, it's hot, but you're glowing and you look beautiful and amazing. Just stay hydrated and don't be afraid to raise your hand and ask for some electrolytes. We don't need anyone passing out up in here. Not in Massachusetts, not right now. But it's an honor and privilege to be here with all of you. And I know the folks in the audience represent many states, not just Massachusetts. Where do I begin? So I actually just came back from Montgomery, Alabama, where I was meeting with Brian Stevenson, maybe just to have him pour into my soul, but to talk about the work. Right. Yes, you can lift that man up. But to spend a few days there to talk about the work we can continue to do in collaboration and together, particularly some of the work we're doing on wrongful convictions right here in Massachusetts, because the proactive work we're doing doesn't slow down even though we're holding the federal government accountable. That's right. And was honored to be in that presence of all the legacy sites, including additional sites that have come online in the last year. And what I loved about being there is reminded me how much it's important to stay in touch with our historical context. So I actually appreciated the frame that Dr. Crenshaw used to talk about how we can use states' rights. Let's be clear, of course, Massachusetts played a role in enslaving Black folks, and sometimes I think people forget that. But they also put out the posters, you put up one, there are many, where they were looking to be on the right side of history to ensure that folks were not frankly, detained and deported to other states to then be enslaved, to be a part of enabling a system that would continue to oppress us. So I take that historical context and frankly put it in my heart along with my faith, which keeps me hopeful, and my personal story to do the work that is necessary, to do with a sense of urgency and also with total fearlessness. I'm like this, bring it on. And so I know I have 1 minute, because if you know your historical context, this is where leadership matters. But I'll lift up 2 points where we're using sort of states' rights. One is everything having to do with DEI and DEIA policies. We as a collective, A.G. Raoul actually from Illinois co-led this, but all colleagues joined to put out guidance to say these are lawful policies, and institutions, frankly, have to not succumb to fear and to continue to protect those doing DEI work. So we were at the forefront of protecting this, and we still are, along with the funding attached when they're conditioning people doing DEI and trying to take away federal funding. And then lastly, NIH funding. which is critical, especially here in Massachusetts, but across this country. We're talking about clinical trials for pediatric cancer, for example. I was proud to be in a leadership role on those cases, and we continue to be, as another example of when you think about the funding that is used to close health disparities in this country, using state law, but most importantly, the laws of all of our states to be able to protect access to that critical public health funding and the jobs that attach. Those are just two examples. I can elaborate later on. But I want to actually just provide the context, because who cares what the issue is? We don't know what it will be when we get off this stage. But you have fierce leaders here who will not succumb to their fears. Frankly, there's targets on all of our backs because we know what's at stake for this generation, but most importantly, our own kids and the generations to come. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for that. So you mentioned the target on all of your backs, and I want to frame this next series of questions as being AG while black. It's a version of driving while black, being president while black, now being AG while black. So there are certain things that you have to encounter, certain things that you have to deal with, certain things that put a lie to the claim that we are a colorblind society. So let's start with what's happening in D.C. today. All right. So we know that today the National Guard has been called into Washington, D.C. We know that it's been called by somebody who considers himself a law and order president, but also a president who released people who actually played a role in killing police officers, right? So I want you to help us make sense of this. As an AG who won a rare conviction of a police officer for killing a black man, as an AG who's been called out of his name as an attorney general, help us make sense of this contradictory use of law and order to do disorderly things, while those of you who are following the law have the targets on your back.
So here's the thing with Trump. If you are operating in service of racial oppression, white supremacy, and him, he's for you. If you're a police officer upholding and protecting the U.S. Capitol, for example, and trying to make sure that we have equal justice under the law, he's against you. It's kind of that simple. I mean, during Trump won, there was a county in New York called Suffolk County, and he gave a graduation speech. At this graduation, he said, when you're arresting these people, you put your hand on their head to make sure they don't bash their head on the squad car. Don't worry about doing that. Let them bash their head. Who cares? All the chiefs of police who were there were like, don't say that, Mr. President. That's a bad thing. Well, the fact is, he is absolutely trying to promote extra-legal, illegal, bad police conduct. I can tell you for the first 6 months of this year, I've tried to have to calm people down because they were so worried that he was going to pardon Derek Chauvin and the other 3 officers who killed George Floyd. Well, that's why we got a conviction on him in state court, but not only that, it's also why, Kim, we did not rely on only the U.S. Department of Justice to get a pattern and practice case against the city of Minneapolis. We also got the state of Minnesota sued the city of Minneapolis, proved his historic and pattern of racial discrimination so that we could have the basis to eliminate and make illegal no-knock warrants, chokeholds, high-speed chase policies, all these kind of things that result in the death of people. Because we know that when he came into office, and I wish Kwame Raoul was here because he could tell you that when under Bush, under Trump won, when Trump came in, he get rid of the consent decree against the city of Chicago. Well, he just did it again, and he did it in Minneapolis, he did it in Memphis, did it here. And so what states' rights means, in terms of Andrea, what you asked her, is that we've got to make sure we use the tools of our states, because during the Trump era, the federal government cannot be counted on as a partner at all. And I will wrap up by saying this. Look, police brutality obviously takes the lives of human beings. But it also does some other things that are truly horrible that I want you to think about. One of the things that it does is that Minneapolis alone has paid $100 million in police misconduct cases in the last 10 years. I don't know what the number is in New York, Chicago, and LA and other big towns, but it's a lot of money that could be going to lights and schools and everything. The other thing is that if you have a pattern of police misconduct, you will have civil disturbance. It's like a law of nature. It will happen. It's going to happen. It's about to happen. And this costs billions, and it costs a lot of lives. Also, too, I am not afraid to tell you that I know a lot of police officers who I would be proud to stand next to, who do put their lives on the line every day to try to help people and be safe. But I would tell you this, Derek Chauvin hurt their reputation.
Yes.
And diminish their ability to connect with community. And when police and community have no relationship, crime does flourish. Because people know the police treat the people in this neighborhood so bad, they ain't gonna call the police if we're selling crack in the back of the house. And so they diminish the safety in the neighborhood, which leads to communities that are over-policed and underprotected.
Yes.
And so for all these reasons, this Trump attitude toward policing and public safety is dangerous for all of us, and we have to stand against it, and we have to use our state powers to do it.
That's right.
Thank you so much. And, you know, I just want to emphasize again the importance of utilizing state law to hold them accountable, because if he'd only been convicted on the federal civil rights charge, we would be looking at him being freed and the symbol that that represents. I mean, just think about what that reflects. Let me also take this as a moment to mention that over-policed, unprotected is also a framework that we've been using to talk about the police violence against Black women as well. And so on Thursday at 2 p.m. at the library, we're going to be talking about Say Her Name, another moment in which it becomes obvious that the anti-Blackness that is at the core of so many of these problems needs to be directly addressed. Attorney General Letitia James, let me come to you. You also have a target on your back. We just heard on Friday that you'd been subpoenaed in relation to the fraud case against Donald Trump that you won. I just want to reinforce that, right? You won this case against him. And so now he's trying to sue you. Now, there are many AGs out there probably who could be doing what you're doing, could be doing more, and yet they don't, partly, one would assume, because of this. This is, what he's doing to you is a warning to everybody else. So what we want to know is, what are the reserves that you draw on to continue this fight, to say, no, not today? Y'all know how I would want to finish that. Not today, Trump.
So, first of all, Dr. Crenshaw, all of us love our Black jobs.
Yes.
And as a woman of faith, and I want to thank you for holding this forum in this church. It's so appropriate. Can I get an amen?
Amen.
And for all of those who believe in a higher power, faith and fear cannot share the same space. And so to all of those who are going to report back to Donald Trump, please tell him that I am tired of renting space in his head. Please tell him that the 94% of all Black women who voted for Kamala Harris stand with me.
Yeah.
Please let him know that there is nothing more powerful than a woman with a made-up mind. And my mind is made up and it's focused on justice and the rule of law and preserving our democracy. My focus is not on what Donald Trump is doing to me. I am lawyered up. My focus is on the countless number of women, particularly black women and immigrants, who fall in my arms crying because they're concerned that they might be disappeared at night. They might be kidnapped at night, that their families might be separated at night, that they've lost their jobs. The vast majority of federal employees who lost their jobs look like me.
Yes.
And as a result of that, you are seeing high foreclosure rates in Virginia, in Maryland, in DC. What we are seeing is a loss of economic power and wealth in communities of color, and the greatest transfer of wealth ever. And so it's important that individuals understand that what he did today in DC and all that he is doing against me is nothing more than a distraction. Release the the Epstein files. Release the Epstein files. We want to know who was responsible for victimizing all of those young girls who were raped, who were assaulted, who were victimized. We will not be distracted by your pettiness. I'm going to continue to do what I do. I'm going to continue to use the law both as a sword and as a shield. We have filed collectively over 30 lawsuits, and we are winning. The last Trump administration, we filed over 100 lawsuits, and we won 80% of our cases. They're much smarter now. They're much more smarter now, and he's got more evil people around him. But at the end of the day, evil will not win. It won't 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 win. We got justice on our side. We've been through a lot worse. We've been through struggle and pain and torture. We've been through a lot worse. Donald Trump, you've got nothing on us. That's Brooklyn.
Yes. Move on. Thank you so much. Mic drop moment, Donald Trump. You heard it. So, Aaron, let's move on to you again. I know, sorry. All on the same team here. All on the same team. So let's talk about the target that was painted on your back by an opponent who said, this guy should be hanging from an effing crane. She compared you to Hamas, and on and on. Now, in an earlier moment, perhaps this kind of politicking, this kind of messaging would have been disqualifying. Not anymore. Not anymore. So what has happened that is bringing us back to an earlier moment in our history when black elected officials were vilified, when they were stereotyped, when they were framed as incompetent, and ultimately we as a people were pushed out of political power? Are we looking at a similar kind of tactic that they're trying to do right now? And what is the message that they're trying to send to black people who hold political power?
You know, let me first say this. I am always honored and privileged to serve beside these colleagues. And the two who are not here, Anthony Brown and Kwame Raoul, let me tell you, they put in work. As you can tell, they're fearless, They are unabashed about the work that they do. You know, you'll hear from him in a second. I'm so proud of the work. He's the youngest of the crew, but he is leading us in so many different ways, and I just want to say thank y'all so much for the work you're doing. I will tell you, you said, what's it mean to be AG while black? I think is how you paraphrase it. You went to how it was going. Let me tell you how it started. Let me tell you how it started. I have the screenshot on my phone here, and I kept it as a favorite on purpose and by design. This was after we found out at 2:30 in the morning on election, the day after election, that we won the first race for AG. And I went to Facebook the next morning, and everybody was congratulating me. I was liking and loving and saying, thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to serve, blah, blah, blah. I went to Facebook Messenger, and the first message I got, we're in a church.
All right.
I'm quoting.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yes, it is.
Lord, forgive me.
Yes.
This is what it says. Great. A fucking nigger AG. That's the first message I got. The very first message I got having won this election, right? That's how it started. Like on Facebook, how it started, how it's going. How it was going was what you've just described. The young lady running against me said that I should be hanging from an effing crane, right? And there was a lot in between, to be sure. I get called everything but a child of God, right? And so do my colleagues, by the way. I'm not testifying for them, but I'm pretty confident in saying that. I announced my campaign literally 2 weeks ago today for governor of Nevada. And thank you for that. But the reason why I told you that is because on that same day I announced, I ended the campaign by going to Preemptive, Nevada, which is a rural part of Nevada outside of Las Vegas. And I was meeting with some folks about issues that were important to them. They talked about health care. They talked about housing. They talked about the economy. We posted a picture on Twitter, and the response to one of those pictures was this: with a bunch of old white liberals, you stupid fucking nigger. That was 2 weeks ago. And let me tell you what happened on a Tuesday. The same thing, right? And I mention that, again, this isn't an issue of seeking attention or pity. It's to tell the truth about it. Because so many folks want to claim we've been in a post-racial society since I don't know when, and at the end of the day, I know that to be entirely untrue.
That's right.
But I continue to be, as Tisha has said, unafraid to take on what's in. So, because here's the deal. I've always viewed these positions that we hold as temporary. I used to be in the state Senate. I was Senate Majority Leader, Senate Minority Leader, and I ran bills that got so much pushback on the other side, but I didn't care because I said to them then, this is a temporary job, and I have to take advantage of the opportunity I have right now to do as much as I can for as many people as possible and as many things as possible as quickly as I can. Right? And what happens is a lot of people get in these positions, and it defines them. It becomes their identity. It's where they get their source of power. It's where they get their influence. It's where they get their ability to demand respect.
That's right.
Never been my problem. Let me tell you why. Because this is what I do, not who I am.
All right.
Who I am. Who I am is a husband to Berna, and a father to Avery, Alexander, and Deuce, two of my sons right here. Right? And everything else comes beyond that. And so at the end of the day, we continue to do work we do because it is important, and we have to stand up while we have the ability to do it, because if we don't, it's a waste, a complete and utter waste of time. And so I'm honored again to be on this stage. Thank you for convening us, and I'm looking forward to the additional conversation.
Thank you
Can I
so
just
much.
say this? So after A.G. Ford gave his speech and talked about this quote, his wife flipped out of her fan and said, "Where's my fan at?"
Yeah. So moving to others who have had targets on their back, I want to come to you, A.G. Nick Brown. So you were a former military attorney before you became AG. Now, with respect to the military, we have seen this president purge the highest ranking black officials from the armed services. We've seen him attempt to erase the history of black people in the armed service. We've seen him even attempt to erase the burial spot of Colin Powell. And he hasn't stopped there. He has reinstituted the names of Confederate traitors to military bases. He has taken off the names of African Americans who have served with distinction. And let's just add this one last little bit. When they purged the library of the Naval Academy of books that they said represented improper ideology, what they took off of the shelves was I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. They took off How Racism Takes Place. What they left on the shelves was Mein Kampf. What they left on the shelves was the bell curve. So this is the proper ideology, and anti-racism is the improper ideology. So I want you to help us think about what this is telling us in the military context. For so long, we've understood that our rights to equality and citizenship actually were routed through our willingness to serve. If that's the case, what is what he is doing telling us as black people?
Well, let me start with the fact that I'm a West Coaster, so I appreciate that. I am not from Brooklyn. However, I did name my oldest child Brooklyn Brown after spending a summer in Brooklyn, and today I'm more proud than ever that she bears that name because of people like Sister James. Let me just get straight to the point to your question. We know what it tells us. This is not a game that we have to guess through and wonder about why Donald Trump and his administration is so focused on erasing our history. We know what they're trying to do. Let me tell you how I respond to it, because as a veteran who has served, as the son of parents and grandparents who have served, I have so much respect for the legacy of service in this country because of the opportunities that it uniquely provided to black Americans. The United States military was the first organized national body to integrate, to provide equal opportunities for people to serve regardless of their race. That is why we saw so many people in service who were black and brown and women in high-ranking positions of authority, unlike any other segment of American society. Not in Fortune 500 companies, not in any other public leadership, but in the United States military, people earn the rank respective of their service. And so to see from the very beginning the removal of a black 4-star general who was serving as Secretary of Defense to be replaced by a Fox News host whose highest rank of achievement was major, which is all due respect to majors, I was only a captain. But the difference between a major and a 4-star general is not small. And to start with that, and then to continually target black people and women from every branch of the military, regardless of their service, their credibility, their credentials, the record that they have run on, targeting black people and women. We know why he's doing it. And then to follow that with elevating traitors to the United States. It is so beyond absurd. And it saddens me because of what it is doing and what it is showing. That the commander-in-chief of our country is elevating unqualified people to run our military and reinstituting and elevating the legacy of traitors like Robert E. Lee. And we should never forget that. That those are traitors to this country. I mean, you can imagine Nazi Germany putting up statues of Adolf Hitler. Or Italy putting up statues of Mussolini. You want to put them in the history books and the museums, that's what you should do. But to elevate them to a place of prominence, and also to revert from elevating people whose legacies were different. All these bases that has been renamed, they were renamed with people who had been unrepresented and disregarded. And to take their names down and put up names like Robert E. Lee and all these pure racists. What does that say about the person making those decisions? You know, there were questions in the first term about whether Donald Trump was racist or not. And I remember this was the question that people would hesitate around answering. But time and time again, he has answered that question for us, and that is no more rare apparent than in the United States military.
Thank you. Thank you. So I want to come back now and talk about some of the specific things that each of you have been involved in to fight and push back. And so I'm going to start with you, A.G. Campbell. You filed a lawsuit, American Public Health Association versus NIH. And in it, you were suing over the cancellation of more than 50 peer-reviewed NIH grants. And these grants were focused on things like Black maternal mortality, HIV in Latino communities, indigenous mental health, other race-conscious research topics, right? So these were efforts to develop knowledge to serve our communities better. Now, interestingly enough, the judge in this case, a Reagan appointee, right? This is important. A Reagan appointee said, I want to get the language right, "This is the most palpable case of racial discrimination I have seen in 40 years. Reagan appointee saying this. So help us understand, what are some of the facts, what are some of the dynamics that made it clear what this was about, and what would have happened, especially to Black communities, had you not been able to sue to restore this funding?"
I appreciate the question and specifically the focus on NIH, because it is the #1 federal agency that provides the #1 source of funding for public health research in the world. It is that significant. So you mentioned some of the diseases we are attempting to tackle in our communities, but let's not also forget it's not just in our communities where we're trying to close these racial disparities in terms of health. It's also for folks who are currently incarcerated, young people who are in DYS and detained. Let's not forget we have many people still behind the wall. And before I get into some of the details as to why this is important and why it's significant and why all of you should care and go out and actually, I think, use NIH funding as one reason to get people who are being indifferent and standing on the sidelines right now to wake the F up. This is costing lives. But I'll take a step back, because I think what has been abundantly clear from this incredible panel of colleagues I get to work with every single day is that we understand we don't know what issue is going to come up next, but we're ready to fight. But we do it with a personal attachment to the work. It's not just professional for us. You know, we share, many of us, we speak about our faith, and Tish brought it down. I always thought Jesus was going to walk in himself. You know, the fearlessness comes from being deeply grounded in our faith, reading the word, knowing the word, praying all day, every day, and carrying that with us everywhere we go. So we smile because we know whose we are, we know we're protected, and we thank God every day for going ahead of us, behind us, and all around us. Thank you, Lord. So we're not afraid. But the second piece I care deeply about, the health disparities piece, is because for some folks, including folks maybe right in this room who are from Massachusetts, who don't realize this, but I'm not only proud to be the first Black woman to serve as Attorney General of this incredible state, and frankly the first woman of color to win statewide office in Massachusetts, so clearly we still have work to do, and I'm proud of that. But the reason I do most of this work around politics and closing the divide, specifically in the context of health, is because I lost my twin brother 13 years ago. He died while incarcerated with the Department of Correction as a pre-trial detainee waiting to go to trial, never made it. He was 29 years old. He had a disease called scleroderma. Until this day, my family has never had any accountability. We don't know how it happened. We don't know all the details, and no one has ever been held accountable. And I never forget that. I have a loved one right now who's incarcerated, and they'll try to use that against me. And again, I say, bring it on. Because it's an opportunity for us not only to go back to our stories, and frankly, I would encourage all of you to do the same when you feel hopeless and you've tackled something all by yourself and you feel like you're by yourself. No, you have an AG on your side, and frankly, if you live in a state where you don't have one of us, well, move. But I say all that to say, so when NIH came down and we looked to file these 2 lawsuits, it was really thinking about how we could take a leadership role to ensure that those health disparities that still exist in our community, that those gaps are closed. And the first lawsuit, we won a preliminary injunction. They did it on a Friday night. They always operate on a Friday night when they think we're at home, I don't know, sleeping. You know, I had to disrupt date night. Sorry, babe, love you. We're going to have to continue this because we got to go back to work because they're taking billions of dollars from our state. And here in Massachusetts, it's not just about a clinical trial and protecting a clinical trial. These are jobs. This is innovation. This is global security. The list is long. Any disease that you can think about, diabetes, dementia, Alzheimer's, cancer. We not only want to go, have the pills ready, we want to eradicate these diseases and the disparities that attach. So we went in on NIH1, and it's only Democratic AGs, even though this affects every single state in the country.
Right.
It's only Democratic AGs. Republicans trying to benefit from our work, but it's Democratic AGs fighting the fight, filing the briefs, going to court. And while the courts, and I can respect, including this Reagan appointee, you just can't go to court looking cute. Excuse me, what's your argument? Where's your documentation? Where's the substance? We're bringing in the substance. And then in the second NIH lawsuit, we didn't get every Democratic AG to join, but I found it as an opportunity to take some legal risk. And I won't go into details of that. But I also think it's equally important in this moment in time, for all of us who are doing some way to fighting back, is to get uncomfortable, to get creative, to take some risk. And so for NIH2, we took some risk, and as a result of that, we won that case too. Funding is flowing, we're continuing to get it back online. And I never want to suggest because we are winning these funding lawsuits that harm is not occurring. You cancel a clinical trial, it's not like canceling a gym membership or missing a date with your personal trainer. You miss one of those appointments, you can die. This is life and death for children, elders, adults. And so even before and this is not a racial justice, racial inequity, this is the frame we're using for this conversation. This is a human rights issue.
That's right.
So as we go back into our communities to lift up some examples, the NIH funding lawsuits that we're all a part of and that we've led on is a really great example of how we're fighting the fight while also still using this frame, but also reminding folks this is a human issue that all of you should care about.
Absolutely. And, I'm so glad that you put the life and death consequences of these rollbacks, because so much of the way the media have been reporting this is that this is a product of a culture war. It's a culture war over diversity, equity, and inclusion. And in fact, it is a war over our lives. People are dying because of these rollbacks. And many times we're not talking about it in the way that it should be talked about. I'm particularly, and you mentioned this, the maternal mortality research, right? We finally got to a point where people were willing to acknowledge that there was something amiss and it wasn't in our bodies that caused us to disproportionately face the risk of death, and our children as well. Medical schools were receiving grants to figure out how to teach their doctors in a way that would enhance our well-being. These are the kinds of things that they've attacked as illegitimate diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we need to be aware of what the stakes are. This isn't just a cultural war. This is a war on our bodies, on our futures, and our lives. So thank you so much for picking up that important fight. Speaking about lives, A.G. Ellison, I want to come back to you to ask you to pick up a little bit more on what you were talking about with respect to the consent decree. So you mentioned that both Trump 1, Trump 2, when he got the opportunity to roll back these consent decrees, he did it. I think some people might not know why those consent decrees were important. What did they do? How did they interrupt patterns and practices that made us at risk for some of these practices? Help us understand what is at stake.
So here's the thing. If your city or town is subject to a federal consent decree based on a pattern and practice of racial discrimination and unconstitutional policing, what that means is that there was a fairly lengthy investigation that happened before the consent decree ever came into place. So there's ample testimony being taken, documents being pulled together, analysis being done, statistical information being arrived at, and testimony from people's everyday lives. So this is not just you get a consent decree. No, we're ready to go to court to prove these allegations, or you can agree, you can consent that it's all true, and we're going to do something about it. So that's where it's important to keep in mind. And I'll just mention, I can mention my own town, but just in spirit of my brother Kwame Raoul, you know, there was a guy named John Burge in Chicago. Y'all ever heard of this guy? This guy was famous for taking a cattle prod, and if any of y'all from down south know what a cattle prod is, and putting it to the genitals of confined people. And all kinds of horrible things, and there was, and you know, and it goes on and on and on, and it deals with things like racial stops. It deals with things like if you complain that an officer mistreated you, even if it's something like he swore at me or smacked me in the head and bashed my head up against the window, then that these complaints were not ever being adjudicated anywhere. So in Minneapolis, you know, we found that there were complaints that were like 450 days old. Complaints. Now think about how many times people have an unfortunate incident, a tragic incident, some abuse that they feel very aggrieved about, but they don't say a word. What does it take to actually make a complaint? And so they bring these complaints, and then they're just not dealt with, which leads to a clear signal: impunity. You're allowed to do this. And so by ignoring these consent decrees, by dismissing these consent decrees, it's not just the high-profile deaths that we all read about. You know, we all know about the tragedy that occurred in Memphis, Tennessee with Tyree Nichols. We know about what happened to Breonna Taylor. We know the cases. In fact, we don't know enough about the black women who've been killed, which Kim has been great in highlighting that. But we do hear about, yeah, that's worth a hand. But we often, you don't hear about how the officer just called you a black so-and-so and smacked you up against the head.
That's right.
You don't know about how he kneed you in the butt needlessly, how he asked for your license and dropped it on the ground. I mean, all this just a routinized mistreatment and abuse. In Minneapolis, Derek Chauvin had 18 complaints for police misconduct by citizens. He was not in the top 10 of people who had complaints. He was not in the top 10. In fact, people want me to tell stories about what an evil man Derek Chauvin was. And the real truth about Derek Chauvin, he's a very banal, uninteresting guy who wasn't the worst or best at anything. He was just sort of a guy who went with the flow. The head of the police union is a man named Bob Kroll, who had 27 complaints, bragged about it, and he was the head of the police union. And one time, when I was in Congress, he told a group of only cops were in the room. Nobody but cops was in the room. You know, Minneapolis residents are pretty dumb. You know, we're at war with the terrorists, and they just elected one to Congress. Now, you may know that I'm Muslim, and so he was saying that Muslims are all terrorists. A black women are pretty cool, y'all, I'm gonna tell you. This sister named, I'll tell you her name, her name was Gwen Gunther, black female police officer, raises her hand and says, "Are you saying that Congressman Ellison is a terrorist?" And he said, "Well, he is one of them." And then when she reported him, he said he didn't say it, but if he did say it, he was only kidding, and he didn't mean it, but he didn't say it anyway. So, and then the police, the chief of police had to issue a public apology telling me that he's sorry if I was offended.
If you were.
So, long story short, these consent decrees, kept his job. Kept his job. These consent decrees are an effort to try to bring real sanity between police and community. And I can tell you that in the city of Newark, anybody here from Newark? Newark was renowned for horrible police brutality in community. They got a consent decree, and they got to the point where for like 2 or 3 years, there were no officer-involved shootings in the city of Newark. And they increased the number of guns that they took off the street. And they improved police community reporting, and they brought a higher level of safety to neighborhoods. So these consent decrees actually make for safer neighborhoods. You know, all of us are prosecutors in one level or another, and we don't want people to be crime victims. And we know black people often are crime victims. And we know that police brutality actually can exacerbate the problem. So these consent decrees are really important.
Yeah. You know, Keith, I just, I'm glad, especially that you made the last point about Newark, because I think a lot of times we don't see reform actually doing the things that it actually does, and the reverse of that is when those reforms are removed, when the signal is given that now they can do anything they want. Some of these patterns go up. So you were just mentioning that there now are more police shootings, more deaths than in 2020, when, of course, we marched all over the country against this. All the promises were made. The assumptions were that at least we wouldn't experience this level anymore, and it's actually gone up.
Yeah, for years, you know, police deaths, in custody deaths were about 1,000 a year. Now they're up around 1,200 a year. They've actually gotten worse. Now, there are some good stories, and we don't want to ignore those, but the overall numbers have not gotten better. In fact, they've gotten worse, and I suspect under Trump they will continue to get worse. So this is a very serious, very costly problem, but you don't ever remember, you don't think about the funeral you didn't go to. You don't think about the funeral you didn't go to. You don't think about the protest you didn't have to do, because that person actually had that encounter and walked away from it. And so we don't think about those things, but we do need to think about those things, because when they happen, we need to be able to tell the difference between good leadership and bad.
Absolutely. Right. A.G. James, I want to talk to you about the lawsuit that you also brought with 20 other AGs to challenge Trump, his effort to demand that states hand over SNAP and Medicaid records for immigration enforcement. Now, it's sort of hard to describe how unusual it is for them to make these kind of demands, but we're seeing a safety net turned into a dragnet. So can you talk about what the government was asking for, what the harms to our communities would be, and why this immediate litigation was the choice that you made for New York?
So, Dr. Crenshaw, during these times when we find ourselves dealing with this administration, I often refer back to Dr. King's words, who soothed my soul. And I can remember the quote that he once stated, and it says, "There's nothing in all the world more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity." Sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. The quote is from his book, Strength to Love. And there comes a time when all of us must take a position that's neither safe, nor political, nor popular, but we must take a position because conscience tells us that it is right. And so that's why here we sit, and all of you who are in attendance want to hear from all of us, because all of us here have a moral compass. All of us recognize that we're dealing with a president that is at war with its people, a president that's at war with our democracy, a president that's at war with the rule of law, and a president that's at war with individuals who are struggling under the weight of poverty and discrimination and racism. And so this president issued an executive order, and all of his executive orders, he talks a lot about former President Biden, and how he, signs with this pen. But President Trump signs all of his executive orders with his Sharpie. And he issued an executive order basically demanding that we turn over our data with regards to SNAP. Now, I know I'm on Martha's Vineyard and I'm around a lot of very bougie black people. I know a lot of you came here with your yachts and you came here chauffeured limousines and all of that, but I also know some of your relatives receive food stamps. SNAP is food stamps. And so basically what they have asked all of us is to hand over your data in regards to individuals who are receiving food stamps, and hand over your data in regards to individuals who are on Medicaid. That's right. And we said no. His reason for demanding that we hand over SNAP and Medicaid is because they were concerned about corruption, waste, and fraud. But we argued that it is nothing more than a pretext for immigration enforcement. And that's why we said no. And so we are currently, obviously, responding to these executive orders because they are engaging in these immigration raids, which are having a chilling effect on immigrants who are afraid to go to school, afraid to go to houses of worship, just afraid in general. And that is the point. It's chaos, it's fear, and it's scapegoating of a marginalized community. And it's really critically important that individuals understand that what we are dealing with is individuals who, again, this sincere ignorance and this conscientious stupidity has come to life. But it's hurting people, and it's harming people. And there are individuals who are afraid to go to a food pantry to get food. There are individuals who are afraid to go to court, who are witnesses to horrific crimes. There's victims of domestic violence who are afraid to go to court to get orders of protection. Right. There's individuals who are afraid to go to ICE to respond to, their immigration court, their hearings, because they're afraid that ICE, these masked individuals with no insignia, no identification, will steal them away. And so we're doing our job. That's right. But all of you have a responsibility. And I want to tell you the story of Jefferson County in New York State, which is near the Canadian border, which is a red district. I think maybe I got 2 votes out of that district. Well, there was a farm, an old sweet farm called Old McDonald Farm. And ICE went in there and raided them and arrested a woman with 3 small children. She doesn't represent the worst of the worst. She was working on a farm. But what was so amazing was that the residents in Jefferson County rose up. A county of 1,300, on one Saturday morning, 1,000 of them showed up and protested against ICE in this red district and demanded that mom and her 3 children be released because they knew that family. And then they discovered that Tom Homan, you know who he is, right? Yes. They discovered that he had a home in Jefferson County, and those 1,000 residents protested in front of his home.
All right.
And the family was released. That was without any action on my part, any action taken by the ACLU. It was on the part of civilians and individuals who care about their neighbors and who care about families and who recognize that we're all inextricably tied together. And then, believe it or not, they invited the Democratic Attorney General that black woman from Brooklyn. They said, we want to invite her to speak to us because maybe she has something to say. And when I walked in, I got a standing ovation. Don't believe that you don't have power. Don't believe that. The power, my friends, lies in our hands. And all we got to do is recognize the power that runs through our DNA. And all of the individuals, all of our ancestors who died for our right to be here, and our right to be here on Martha's Vineyard with your snooty selves. So stand up and fight back and remember the residents of Jefferson County.
Sis, I think you're the only person that can call people snooty and get applause. AG Ford, I want to.
Madam Moderator. What you're not gonna do is keep making me follow Tis James, okay?
I'll go.
We're gonna roll it back the other way this time. Let's talk a little bit about resistance. Let's talk a little bit about the role that you all have played in pushing back. So I'm thinking about the 13 Republican AGs that warn Fortune 500 companies that keeping their diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, and y'all, I always say that. I try not to say just DEI. I want people to hear that they are opposing diversity, equity, and inclusion. So they wrote this letter saying that if they continue to embrace these policies, that they were doing something unlawful. And they were weaponizing the Supreme Court decision in SFFA to say so. Now, in response to that, we saw companies like Target, McDonald's, all of these companies that, were all in our faces a couple years ago.
Yep.
Suddenly like, oops, sorry, no, we're done. So you wrote a letter in response, along with other AGs, actually clarifying what the responsibilities are, what the law actually required, what it allows, and why it's important to maintain these commitments. So you planted your flag in the sand, and a lot of AGs didn't. So first of all, help us understand what's the overreach that they're trying to execute, and why is it important to stand up and fight?
Well, thank you, Madam Moderator. First off, let me indulge me for a second. Kudos to Keith again for doing what he did in Minnesota after George Floyd. He emboldened all of us to do a lot of things in our own state.
Yeah.
We've all worked to improve cop and community relationships. It's interesting because he asked me about the target on my back with the young lady who ran against me and should actually be hanging from a crane. The largest police union in Nevada endorsed her against me. Right. It's an interesting dilemma to contemplate.
Yes.
Right, as the top law enforcement officer in the state, having to work with that form of mentality. But it's something that I'll point out because someone said on this stage that we're standing up anyway. Sometimes you're going to have a target on your back, right? Sometimes you are going to be doing things that are counter to political expediency. Yeah. And right now, the diversity, equity, and inclusion conversation is counter to political expediency.
That's right.
in so many people's eyes. But I've never run from it, won't run from it. Not only because, as Andrea says, we have personal stories, but because it's what's the right thing to do, right? And I will share that in a second, but it's important to note, I'm going to say this because it was only 13 Republican AGs.
That's good.
Understand this now.
Yeah.
Everybody didn't sign on to that letter. They have 27 Democratic AGs, Republican AGs. Okay? And I say that to give credit where it's due. Not everybody signed on, and in fact, the vast majority, if not all of them that signed on, none of them have a Fortune 100 company in it. I want you to understand that, right? They utilize their bully pulpit to scare folks on purpose and by design, and we have to utilize ours to stand up. And like we keep mentioning our colleague who is not here, Kwame Raoul, he is a leader in this field, and he and I got together soon, as well as us, the Black Attorneys General, and convinced our other Attorneys General to Democratic AGs to sign this letter, to send a letter in response that my office penned that explained that the Harvard decision was limited. And it did not undo or prohibit what corporations were doing. To your point, though, let's be clear. The Democratic Attorney General Association had a meeting in Minnesota soon after that case came out. And we had a panel to discuss this particular case. I'm just saying this out loud because I want you to understand the actuality of this all. Because I know some of you guys are going to be able to go and you can talk to some folks. I was the moderator on that panel, and I asked corporations to join me on the stage, on the panel, with other AGs to talk about why SFFA did not apply and why they would continue the diversity programming. Now, as you said, after George Floyd, there was not enough room in this building, enough tables or chairs that could fit around them that would have filled enough of people who said I was all supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion. I could not find one corporation, not one, to sit with us to talk about the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Okay. Take that back home. Now look, I'm not oblivious to the fact that, you got shareholders you got to work, cater to, and you have lawsuits, and, sometimes just the fear of litigation is sufficient, but understand that sometimes you got to take politically inexpedient positions. Right? Sometimes you got to stand up anyway, and that's what we continue to do, especially in this particular context, right? Because I can speak to it as I tend to the mic, not only because it's the right thing to do and because it's still lawful to do, but I would not be here were it not for a scholarship. Now, I got into Texas A&M in university, but I couldn't afford to go there. I couldn't even afford the application fee. It was $25. I couldn't afford it. But I got into Texas A&M, and they said, okay, here is an affirmative action scholarship for you. It was for black and brown folks. The scholarship that afforded me to be able to pay for college was designated for black and brown folks. I don't run from that fact, right? I would not be here. Not only did it allow me to matriculate into Texas A&M, it allowed me to ultimately graduate from Texas A&M. You talk about food stamps, that's what I called them because that's what I was on when I was a single parent in college, right? You talk about Medicaid, I know about it because that's what I was on, keeping my son healthy when I was a single parent in college. Right? It's these types of programs that I continue to espouse and to testify by, because if it weren't for those programs, not only would Aaron Ford not be the Attorney General with 5 degrees, including my PhD, I also, it didn't just help me as a generation, it helped the next generation, because the son I had in college, we share the hashtag from Medicaid to medical doctor. You see, he's a medical doctor now, right? Georgetown graduate, 3-time president of his class. This is what I'm talking about. Understanding this and how real and how important this is and standing up for it, even though people are going to call you crazy stuff, mistreat you, I'm impervious to political pressure when it comes to that kind of stuff. Yes. And I encourage you to go back home and be the exact same way.
And part of the hashtag that we need to embrace now is that I was a beneficiary of affirmative action, because too many people are willing to say, oh, not like you. It's not you that we're trying to push out. And I say, no, it was me. I wouldn't have had my job at UCLA, at Columbia. I wouldn't have gotten into Harvard Law School without affirmative action. We need to embrace these programs rather than run away from it. So A.G. Brown, when it comes to the Department of Justice's intimidation campaign, it's baffling, mind-boggling how far they're willing to go. So one of the things that you were involved in is pushing back against their campaign to encourage major law firms to drop their civil rights clients. I'm just like, the Department of Justice, I mean, their job is supposed to advance civil rights and to encourage the representation, and yet this department, weaponized by Trump, is trying to move in the other direction. So what were they trying to do? What were the consequences of that? And why did you think it was important as attorney generals to step in?
So I'm sitting here just smiling so much. And even in this moment of stress and concern and attacks on us and our history, to see the brilliance up here on stage, and I think we need to not miss an opportunity to elevate the joy in our work and in this moment as well. So I'm so proud. I was elected in November, so I've only been Attorney General for 7 months tomorrow. But I have so much joy doing my job on behalf of my state, but the opportunity that I get to work and learn from these colleagues is amazing. So I spent most of my career prior to my current job in and out of the Department of Justice. I always like to say that I grew up professionally in the Department of Justice, and for many years, the Department of Justice, from my perspective, was a beacon of excellence and opportunity in this country. And a lot of people don't know that the single reason the Department of Justice was created was to enforce the rights for newly free Black Americans. We had an Attorney General at the beginning of our country, but we did not have a Department of Justice until we needed a Department of Justice to enforce the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. So when I look to the Department of Justice, it is based on that legacy of excellence and fighting to protect us. Now, they failed many times along the way, but their entire mission was geared and centered around civil rights. And so to see the destruction, and that's an accurate word, the destruction of the mission of the Department of Justice, led by an Attorney General who explicitly said that she wanted to find and root out people that did not support the president. And that was a news story for like 24 hours.
Yep, exactly.
But to see that come from the most powerful law enforcement figure in the United States, if not the world, it really hurt me because of the legacy of excellence and progress in that institution. But so much of their attacks have been not only against some of the most vulnerable, but what was interesting about the attacks on law firms is that it went after some of the most powerful. And so the president issued an executive order stripping away security clearances for certain law firms, taking away contracts from law firms, essentially, but a big target, not on some of the most vulnerable, but the most powerful. And what was interesting about that is that if you can get some of the brightest, wealthiest, most privileged people and institutions in America to capitulate, to bow down to the president, what fighting chance do the rest of us have?
That's right.
And I think that's exactly why the president targeted those clear political opponents. And so when they targeted Perkins Coie, which is a law firm based in Seattle, I very quickly reached out to that firm and said, me and my colleagues would love to help. What can we do? And so we led an amicus brief on their behalf. You know, and in like so many of our cases, what is interesting is that we went to court and we won. And we get down in this moment because there is so much destruction happening, but I am so proud of the work that we are doing, not only because of the mission it represents, but because of the success we're having. And so we brought a case on behalf of Perkins Coie. There's New York law firms, other law firms in Illinois. They were also the targets. And each and every one of those law firms that opposed that executive order has been successful. They have won their cases. But it was interesting in that litigation, so we stood up on behalf of our states to support them, but those law firms also went to sought support from other law firms in America, which is natural, right? There are law firms, they're similarly targeted, situated, colleagues across the country, and so they thought, I think rightly so, that other law firms would stand with them. But 91 of the 100 most profitable law firms in America said not a damn thing. They refused to put their names on the line. And I think that is one of the saddest testaments to our legal profession that has happened in modern history. That the most powerful, wealthiest, talented, smartest people did not have the institutional fortitude to stand against the destruction of the rule of law. And the reason why that was so important, because those institutions during the first Trump administration had done pro bono case on behalf of undocketed people, had done pro bono work on behalf of civil rights issues, had done pro bono work to protect abortion access in America. But the president successfully convinced law firms to bow down. But that is not the stance that I was going to take. That was not the stance my colleagues were going to take. And it has proven to be the right stance because it was morally correct and legally correct and successful at the end of the day.
So I'm going to stay with you because basically.
You sure you don't want Tish to go
I
first?
promise, yeah, no. I don't want to get in trouble down there. So you've given us a picture of what real resistance looks like from the level of attorney generals. Our understanding, though, is that one of the reasons why you had 91 that didn't want to do anything is that the equation for them is, why risk the wrath of this administration when we don't benefit from it and there are no consequences to us for not doing anything? So it suggests somehow we've got to figure out how to change the equation on the ground. That's where the rest of us come in. Yeah. So I'm keen to provide an opportunity for everyone to learn what we can do to change the equation on the ground. So in a minute, I'm going to ask A.G. Ellison to talk about target, because that's an equation changer on the ground. But what are some of the other ways that this can be denaturalized, that we can show exactly how outrageous this weaponization is and what we can actually do about it to make it costly for those to participate and to appease?
Well, first I should say that those law firms that took the stance of the 91 law firms and others, they chose incorrectly. They thought that there would not be consequences, but from my perspective, in fact, there have been consequences. Mm-hmm. They have been losing clients, they have been losing partners, they have been losing law recruits, new law students. As they deserve, But as you know, some people up here have already said, it's gonna take, we will survive Donald Trump. Yeah. I'm not worried about that. We will survive Donald Trump. But I am concerned about what the future holds for us as a country. And it is going to take more than attorney generals or any other politician in America. It's going to take the people in this room and people in every community across this state who are doing work in their communities on small issues and the large issues, lifting up people, supporting their organizations, their churches, their schools. That is the work, that is the fabric that has continued to bind us together. And the thing that I would encourage everyone to do is that as much attention as we pay to the national government, and rightly so from what we're seeing from this president, but I truly believe, and I thought this before Donald Trump was ever a politician, the things that most of us care about, worry about on a day-to-day basis, the quality of our children's education, healthcare, environmental protection, public safety, taxes, whatever, traffic, the things that you wake up in the morning worried about, those are not being decided in Washington, D.C. That's right. Those are being decided in your state capitals, your city halls, your county governments. And your ability to influence what is happening at a state and local level is so powerful. It is hard to oppose a president or get Congress to do much. Sorry to former congressmen. But your voice is so powerful at a state and local level. If this body here collectively showed up at their state capitol and said, we are demanding this, or you collectively sent a letter or email to your city council person and said, we want you to work on this, those people are going to respond. Maybe not 100% like you'd like, but they are accountable to you in a way that the president and a Congress never will be. So all the energy that we face, all the angst that we face, all the concern we face in this moment, I would just implore you to drive that home in whatever community you live in this United States of America. That's right.
A.G. Ellison, I promised I would come to you to talk a little bit about the equation changing boycott on the ground. And while you're at it, can you talk just a little bit about how we got here? We were talking at the beginning about space traders and the idea that people think, if I just stick my head in the stand now, they will pass me over. And in reality, that's never what happens. They will come back. If they take someone in the morning, they're coming back to you in the afternoon. That's what we learned over the last 4 years. So help us understand this drumbeat that came after us, starting with CRT, then moving to 1619, then DEI, and now to all of us. And help us understand how target, boycott, and other kinds of ways that people have responded may open the path forward for us.
Well, let me just say, Target is a Minnesota corporation. And to be very candid with you, I like shopping at Target. I haven't done it since they sold us out. But I want to be clear, it's not like I got some hatred for Target. It's that they have signed up with Lucifer, and I just can't abide that. And they'll come, and let me tell you, they're on a charm offensive right now. Maybe some of them are here. They're on a charm offensive. They're trying to go to the Black Caucus. They're trying to go to all these different institutions and love up on us and talk about all these great things that they've been doing. Oh, we do 5% and all this, don't you know? I'm like, yeah, that's nice, but you signed up with Trump. You sold us out for him. So I'm not the leader of the boycott. Those are, there are other people who are doing that. But I'm not crossing that line until those folks work it out. And I think that if you are in a corporation that is thinking about abandoning its constituents and consumers, some of you all, let's be honest. Tish is joking, but the truth is this is a powerful room. Look to your left, look to your right. Some of the most powerful African Americans in America are sitting in this church right now. Go to your C-suite people and tell them that you stand with your consumers and we'll stand with you. You stand against us and we won't. Target's sales are down 7%. And Costco sales are up. And Target can change it overnight. Please hold them to it.
Where's Costco based? Where's Costco? Oh, Washington State.
So I got the hook, so I'm gonna pass it. But please use your influence where you're powerful. Everybody in this room is a powerful leader, and we need you to get out there and tell these folks, time to step up to the plate. You're gonna make more money with your consumers than you're gonna make with the person who's trying to put tariffs on you, right? Who's doing all kinds, insulting your consumers. I don't need them to be on our side. We need them to be on their own side. So I'll stop there.
And AG, let me just add, because I'm glad that both you and AG James have been speaking directly to some of the folks in the audience who do have juice, who are in these C-suites. And let me just be honest, may not have thought that the attacks that have been going on in the last 4 years were ever going to come into their spaces. But it was never about just race-conscious admissions. It was never just about 1619. It was never just about what we teach about Black history. It was about the entire project of racial equity, justice, inclusion, and democracy. They want to dismantle all of it and are on their way to do it. The only difference now is we got us, right? You guys are in the way of this. So as I wrap up with my last three people, I want to come to you, A.G. Campbell. So we know that another side of this is happening right in Massachusetts. We know that the loss of Claudine Gay, we know the loss of so many Black women has been a coordinated strategy to take us out from the very top. So as you look at the retreat that we're seeing everywhere, what stands out for you and what does genuine resistance look like against these retreats that we're seeing everywhere?
We didn't have these questions before, by the way, so we're pulling from our spirits here. Yeah. And I just actually like that you lifted up Black women. Because if you know the history of this country and of this world, Black women, Black women, Black women were at the forefront of every movement to save our democracy, our institutions, to ensure that we talked about these issues with a frame that was important to our people, but also a human rights frame. You think about reproductive health care, it was Black women who said, wait a minute, this is a human rights issue. You think about democracy and, of course, the institutions themselves, the Department of Justice, all this history that we keep talking about up here Black women who often don't have their stories told, particularly in the political space. I mentioned to a conversation I was at earlier that Fannie Lou Hamer was my muse last year. And if you don't know Fannie Lou, and half of y'all were like, please go look up Fannie Lou Hamer. She got a beat down.
Yes, she did.
A beat down for us to sit up here and to stand in these elected roles we have today. My current muse isn't a black woman, it's Muhammad Ali. And I say that because I think it's appropriate. Massachusetts is, we're not New York, California in terms of size, but I've been telling folks we punch above our weight. So I feel like Muhammad Ali every day. And here's someone who lost everything, but still stood up and made our issues human rights and global issues. And so I think it's important that we remind ourselves of this history, in particularly, of course, around women, but find a muse or something, right, in addition to our faith as we press forward. But also to know the political history, because I think A.G. Brown's point has to be just echoed. The majority of folks don't know who their AG is, sadly. Even in this moment in time, you go back to your respective states and you ask just colleagues and friends, who's your AG? And actually in the political context, there's only been 4 black women AGs elected in this country. I'm the 4th. A.G. James came before me. And so I just stress that to say, in order for us to take on any issue that matters to our communities and our people, and to ensure we're not only using a human rights lens, but the lens we're using today, who's in these positions of power matter, and they know that. So I would say, go run for office. We need some unusual suspects in some of these places. And invest in candidates. Most of us are up for re-election in 2026. You need resources. Invest in candidates. Vote. Encourage others to vote. He was there by election, right? At the end of the day, our AG tools are going to hit a wall. Institutional tools are going to hit a wall. But the most powerful tool, whether you're in a C-suite or not, or on SNAP benefits or not, is you can vote. And the number one tool that was the most significant in our historical context in transforming it to allow us the opportunities that we all have, was people voted and they mobilized and they organized. And if I'm worried about anything, it's certainly not Donald Trump. And my middle name's Joy, so I just got to stand in that every day. I'm worried about 2026, and I'm also worried about 2028. And if we don't get our act together, the vice president will be president. So we need to, of course, we got us focusing on the issues, but get out and vote and start mobilizing more candidates to also get out and vote and take our rightful places. So thank you all for having me.
Now, A.G. Ford. I'm giving you a lifeline, A.G. Ford. It's your turn.
I appreciate that. Look, I wanted to respond to the question similar to how my colleague to my left did, and that's about voting at your local election level. I mean, to be sure. Nick Brown is exactly right. It's hard to fathom taking on the president, but a lot of stuff happens at the local level, right? Including at the gubernatorial level, by the way. So I need half of y'all to move to Nevada. The other half moved to Michigan for Garland Gilchrist. He's running for governor over there. Give it up to him. Give it up to him. And I also want you to think about something different. Tisha touched on immigration. And I'm from Texas originally. When we talk about immigration, a lot of people think about the southern border, right? My number 2 in the office was a Trinidad and Tobagan who was undocumented. He allows me to tell the story. Undocumented as a child. Looked like us, y'all. Undocumented as a child in New York, in Brooklyn, in fact.
Of course.
Yeah. And he tells a story of when he was a young teenager, couldn't buy cigarettes. His neighbor told him to. And he says, I can't. I'm not 18. And they said, I'm going to call immigration on you then. So he went and bought some cigarettes, right? These are our people, y'all, who are being taken advantage of as well. And so one of the ways that you can help is to think outside the box, right? I mean, we have to be conscientiously empathetic to what's happening to others around us, right? And speaking of others around us, we have some strong people in the office, in our room right now from Texas. State Rep Aisha Davis, Harold Dutton, and Benton James. Please stand up. I'm going to turn to the mic, but I'm going to say thank you for what you do. Everybody can't do what attorneys general are doing to push back. We get it. We know you have different considerations, and I asked you to figure out what you can do and do it. Everyone can't do what you're doing, but thank you so much for standing up and figuring out a way to push back and continue that fight. We stand with you. Thank you so much, Madam Moderator.
Thank you. So actually, I'm tempted to give my conclusion before my sister. But we got a little business afterwards, so A.G. James, give us the benediction that we need.
First, you got to send around a collection plate. No. No, stop.
Yes, we'd love to do that.
No, I think it's really critically important that we be very serious. What we are seeing is the undermining of our democracy before our eyes. What we are seeing as a result of these three legislators is the suppression of the right to vote, from which all of our other rights emanate. And what we see is the struggles of our ancestors and all that they've accomplished being eroded. 70 years, if not more, progress being eroded. And so we've got to think about our children, the next generation of individuals. We've got to think about the stories that we should tell them. We've got to think about all of the sacrifices that we have made. We've got to continue to talk about our history and our struggles. And there will be some collateral damage. There's no question about it. There's no denying it at all. But I wake up each and every day with this fire in my belly. And I wake up each and every day drunk on hope. And I don't drink. And it's that hope that pushes me forward. It's that hope that inspires me to fight back. It's that hope that allows me to use this position that I have been blessed to hold, to push back against an administration which represents an existential threat to all that we believe in. A fascist government, an oligarch, and a government which unfortunately is just plain evil. And this is nothing more than the creation of a new world order grounded in nationalism, white nationalism. And individuals need to understand that. But what we've got to recognize is that we've been here before and we survived. And so I don't know about you, but I want all of you to leave this church and just remember all of those who prayed here, who cried here, and all the sacrifices they have made. And remember that you've got a responsibility to vote. We've got an election in Virginia coming up this year, and we have the opportunity to elect another Democratic Attorney General of color. His name is Jay Jones. Let me say it again, Jay Jones. We also have the opportunity to elect next year my Congress member, the leader of the Democrats in the House, my brother, my friend, Hakeem Jeffries. So we need to organize, and we need to talk to individuals who we may disagree with and let them know what is at stake. And we've got to register individuals And we've got to let them know that we right now are losing our democracy, and let them know what is at stake. So we're going to do what we have to do. We're not afraid. But the responsibility falls on all of your shoulders. Each and every one of you have a duty and a responsibility to stand up and fight back with some steel in your backbone. And to work for a better union. To work, again, we've got to talk about post-Reconstruction, because that's what we've got to talk about. The third iteration of a post-construction era, how we're going to rebuild, because we will be back. And all of the losses, all of the progress, we've got to rebuild it. And we've got to organize. And we've got to have boots on the ground. And we have to have individuals who are fearless and who are not afraid to speak truth to power. That's what we do each and every day, and that's what we're committed to. Because we represent the dreams of our ancestors. And we're going to continue to fight back and stand up. So may God continue to be with each and every one of you and know what flows through your DNA and through your spirit. And know that you should never give up. You should never be silent. You should never concede. You should never bend. You should never capitulate. You should never bow. You should never cower. You should never give up. You should stand up, fight back, because the power is within us. God bless you and thank you.
All right. Okay. So on behalf of AAPF, I want to say two things. We are nonpartisan, but we are pro-democracy.
Amen.
We are pro-human. We are pro-African American. So whatever that entails, it means we have to fight, not for the next election, not for the next president, but this is a fight for the next century. So I want to thank, from the bottom of my heart, these amazing freedom fighters who have shared their vision, their commitment, and their witness to all of us. Please follow them, support them, and continue to be part of this journey. Dr. K. Weiss Whitehead.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor Kimberly Crenshaw, for this amazing conversation. If you were moved, if you were activated, if you were inspired by the conversation tonight, support the work of the African American Policy Forum. Stand with leaders who protect our rights and strengthen the community institutions. This is what keeps us connected. It keeps us informed. Stay tuned for our upcoming events and join us on social media at AA Policy Forum. Please also come to part 3 of our residency in Martha's Vineyard with your snooty selves. Come on and join us. Come on and join us. Because this week, in all seriousness, this is one of the things that we do that touches my heart the most. We'll be at the Oak Bluffs Library for the next stop of the book tour for Say Her Name. Black women's stories of police violence and public silence. Yeah. It will be an intimate afternoon of artivism beginning at 2 p.m. featuring a book reading, and Professor Crenshaw in conversation with members of our Say Her Name Mothers Network. Please plan to join us as we hear from the mother of Breonna Taylor will be one of the mothers joining us. We're going to also be in conversation with you from 2 to 4:30 p.m. We do have palm cards. Make sure you get that. Another way you can support us, we are selling some of our merchandise and books to your left. We hope you consider actively supporting us. Thank you to the audience here in Union Chapel. Thank you to all of you who joined us virtually, because together
we can prepare, we can protect, and we can move forward with purpose in our step and steel in our back.
That's right.
We have to remember who we are, teach it to our children, and remind ourselves daily. Let's once again thank our panelists for bringing the fire. A.G. Nick Brown, A.G. Aaron Ford, A.G. Tish Campbell, A.G. Keith Ellison, A.G. Andrea Campbell, and our Professor Crenshaw is here. AGs, please remain on stage. We're going to take a group photo before you exit. I know many of you want to get that photo, but don't leave. I do have a few more announcements after we take this group photo.